Hello, Southwest Florida. Welcome back. So glad you stayed with us, and I'm really thrilled to get a chance to talk to these gentlemen. I've been doing this show for 32 years now, and one of the first guests on my show is sitting here now. Came on my show back in the early 1990s, so he can verify that Lee Pitts Live is not a mirage. We actually been around that long. There will be one Jim Nathan.
And it's still alive.
Still alive, man.
Yes, sir.
Let me bump y'all in.
Yes, sir.
And whenever Jim comes on the show, he's always bringing a good old pal with him, somebody who's doing something positive in the community.
Yes, sir.
So we got Barrion Staples here, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, see, I got it down fact.
Thank you, sir.
Barrion, good to get you here as well. That'd be the Reverend Doctor. So, Jim, I said that way back in the early 90s, you used to come on the show. And one of the reasons you used to come on the show back in the early 90s was Lee County Pulling Together had captured your attention. And I always was wondering, like, okay, here's Jim Nathan. He's made it in life, in my mind. He's the CEO and the largest hospital concern in the southern part of the state of Florida, and all this at Lee Health now. It was Lee Memorial then. But you seem to always speak up against things that you saw that were injustice. How did you balance that, or was it ever anything that you were trying to balance? That was just who you were.
When Lee County Pulling Together got started, was specifically out of the incentive from a University of Michigan study that said that Fort Myers was the most segregated city in the South at that time, and third most in the nation. So the top two were in the other part of the country, and I had people saying to me, well, we can't be the worst. And I said, what if we're fifth worst? What if we're eighth worst, 10th worst? It's still wrong.
Right.
It's still wrong. So we got off to a lot of energy. We had over 800 people that participated in small circles, facilitated with both blacks and whites, and it was a really exhilarating. I made a lot of friends.
I remember those circles, yeah.
It was a phenomenal experience. And then the steering committee that I was on, after a while, it started to get smaller. And I remember saying one day, if this is just some white folks trying to be well-meaning, this doesn't work. It's got to be a partnership,
yes.
And we've got to make a difference.
A lot of that stems from your experience during the civil rights movement. Yeah, and just dealing with a wide range of people. I think, if I'm not mistaken, your father had put a lot of values in you in terms of treating everybody equally and that kind of thing.
Yeah, my dad's business, all the businesses around his were destroyed in a post-MLK speech where somebody had been injured and there were riots. All the businesses around my dad's business were destroyed, and his wasn't. And I talked to this one man afterwards, months later, and I said, what can you tell me? And he said, Mr. Ray, that's my dad. Mr. Ray treats us like human beings.
And your background, Doc, I'll just call you Doc for right now. Your background sort of intersecting with Jim Nathan was like the perfect intersection now as you guys move forward with Southwest Florida Voices for Racial Justice, founded by Jim Nathan.
Yes, I have an interesting background. I grew up a little older than what I look. I grew up during that times of the 60s. My family were always involved with social justice issues. I became more aware of a lot of problems coming from the Chicago area. In spite of it not being in the South, there was a lot of segregation. I literally lived in a place where you had to live on the right side of the tracks. Because, getting called the names, police harassment all the time, gunshots going out, every night. A lot of my friends, they went the route. Some end up in the grave. Some ended up in prison. I was fortunate because I had a praying family. I had my grandparents were church going, and I grew up in the church. And I was fortunate to have certain people in my family that I didn't realize what they were doing at the time because they were just my cousins, the staple singers.
Right.
Did a lot of the singing, and still to this day, Mavis is still singing what she called message music. And I remember going on all the marches, everything. So as I grew up, I was fascinated. One of the first books that I read was Man-Child in the Promised Land by Claude Brown, that, you know, he was from Harlem, and I kept thinking, we going through the same things in the North that people talk about in the South. So it was instilled in me many years ago to what I want to do to make some changes. As I was growing up, I got involved with Operation Breadbasket that Jesse Jackson had. That's where I met one of my mentors and lifelong friends that passed away, Reverend Dr. C.T. Vivian. Saved me most of my life as I went on through school. And
you naming some legends.
You know, they were great friends. And James Cleveland, I knew him, Clay Evans, and I knew a lot of entertainers that helped influence me. But Stokely Carmichael was probably the one that really gave me the greatest influence. You
definitely do not look as old as you are.
Well, I've been drinking some good Kool-Aid. Well, I never tell my age, but I can tell you this. I can talk to you about when Eisenhower and Nixon, I delivered the newspaper when Kennedy got shot. And so I'm a little older than what I look.
Well, let me pose this question to both of you. Based on the things that you guys have been so fortunate to experience. I say fortunate because it brings you to this point now with all of that knowledge and understanding of how mankind should strive to be, you know, a more perfect union, let's just say. And now you, here in the modern period, in the 21st century, early part, Jim, we still have to have what's called Southwest Florida Voices for Racial Justice. We should have evolved to the point as a society where there's no need for any type of organization like that. That's not the case, Jim?
Absolutely not the case, and sadly it's not the case. Right now, those two young men in Tennessee that were removed from the Tennessee government and legislature, and you know, hopefully they'll become voices for the future of this country.
That was something, wasn't it?
Yes.
And sad and scary, but there's a movement going on. My wife and I refer to it as the 1939 movement, and that it's almost an autocratic, click your heels. I work with a professor at Florida Gulf Coast who had her name and her class turned in because it had the word equity in the title of the class. The fear that then comes from
turned into whom?
Turned into the state government, to DeSantis, and as part of a requirement that every public university in the state of Florida had to submit any title of a class, anything whatsoever that would deal with DEI, diversity, equity, and all hers was it had the word equity in the title of her class. And that's wrong.
And
it's just wrong.
That's a shame because I've spent years, I was, a professor. I mentioned about my background, which led me to teaching. Classes I taught, race and ethnic relations, cultural competency, interculturalism/multiculturalism. And when Jim is saying that, it made me think, would I have a job? But I will continually teach truth and teach about race and ethics and cultural issues regardless, because education is so important. You have young minds, even old minds, that need to hear information, and we talk a lot about critical thinking. They need to be able to critically process information from the past, and it's a shame this governor is trying to eliminate history. The worst thing that I heard last week when he said racism was just a theory. Now, you can't tell me about the three civil rights movement, the boys in Chandy and those guys, that racism is a theory. You can't tell me what Medgar Evers went through, that was just a theory. You can't tell me about the issues that went on back in the 60s and Dr. King getting shot and the things he went through was just a theory. It's a shame. It's a shame. We have to teach truth, but they're trying to squash truth, even to the extent of denying teachers from teaching what they should teach.
What would be the motive, Jim?
Well,
with the governor of the state of Florida,
sadly, as an old white guy,
sounding like almost like George Wallace type stuff.
Let me just say, as an old white guy, I think it's protection of white supremacy and economics and basically wanting to say we're in charge and we don't want. I mean, I think there's a fear over the fact that we're going to become a majority-minority nation in the not that distant future, and I know that that would be denied, that there's any motivation, but I don't know what the other motivation would be.
How does that make you feel, though? I'm coming back to you, Barrion. But how does that make you feel? Because you have always been a strong champion for those type of words: diversity, inclusion, equity. It is. You built a great hospital that's. You can see diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout Lee Health right now as a result of your foundation pushing that from the top way back before it was fashionable.
Right.
How does that make you feel to see these types of rollbacks being attempted?
Well, in all of history and even in various theories, for every action there's a reaction. And I think, Voices for Racial Justice got started on a positive aspect after the George Floyd murder.
Okay.
To take advantage of what seemed to be a national movement of realization that we've got issues and we need to be better at it. But the other side didn't like that. And there was a swift and rapid movement to basically shut down a national movement that was occurring to remove monuments. I mean, I was naive enough to believe that we could finally get the portrait of Robert E. Lee out of the county commission chambers.
Is it out now?
No.
Okay.
And no, I was naive enough to believe that would happen.
Okay.
And today, even worse than when we tried
portrait.
a year and a half, 2 years ago, today it'd be virtually impossible. Because the reaction would be that we're trying to destroy history, but there's no other country that basically takes the past and makes it appear to be wonderful, when reality is it was about slavery.
You hear this all the time, Jim as well. We hear this all the time. This is the Obama backlash. Black president, all of that. Now it's the backlash on the heels of Donald Trump and all of that. Does that play a role in what we're seeing now?
All of it does. When we look at what Jim is talking about, it takes me back to Jim Crowism. He's alive and well. And of course, Obama has a lot to do with it. And when I teach classes, I always talk about the whole concept of the first black president. What's interesting is he's not the first black president. He's the first biracial president. His father was from Kenya. His mother from what I call the land of Toto and Dorothy in Kansas. But yet, because we have what in this country is called the one-drop rule.
That is correct.
And so Obama fits that. Anybody with the dark skin, any affiliation of anything African or from the West Indies, you would consider black. So he considered, for all practical purposes and just for speaking in general, yes, he is the first black president. There's a lot of backlash from that and the whole Trump thing. Ironically, the whole Trump thing is still going on because his cultism is still living right now through DeSantis and the people in Tennessee. What they did was ironic about the thing in Tennessee is that there were 3 people, 2 black males, 1 black female representative, white that was white. They went back and redid it and decided to keep her in and kick the 2 black guys out.
She stayed in by 1 vote.
By 1, but still,
she's still there.
She's still
and
in.
She said it was because of her skin color this morning.
Yeah.
I saw her on the news.
Yes. We're in a serious, we are in a Cold War right now and a cold Civil War.
And it's deeper than that in the sense of it's not a black-white, it's not solely a racial issue, it's a control and power issue.
Yes.
Power.
That's fearful.
You said a word in that whole monologue right there.
Yes, sir.
You used that word cult.
Yes. Yes.
Break that down. How would you define a cult? You said cultism, the whole cult.
Cultism is almost like you taking a group of people, you're feeding them a doctrine to say that they're going to be just as empowered to do certain things that they want. You're going to give them all these great riches, and yet don't. I remember getting called in to help work on the David Koresh cult situation. I went down to Texas, and I could not believe what I was doing a child custody investigation. His father wanted his 2 kids out. And I remember Rosenberg here and I used to do a lot of work on satanic cults, which is different than cultism and occultism. But it reminded me of the same thing, that when you're dealing with occults, he's called it, my partner, the kids, they have looks in their eyes that could kill, blank looks. This is a cult where you have people, their eyes are blank, they have no vision about themselves. So to be involved with a cult, the only vision they have is what this man is telling them, what this man Trump is telling them. How can you be indicted and someone part of the cult membership gets on the radio or the TV and tells you to send this man money? A man who's a billionaire has a private jet. You have people that are sending him money, eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. That's what cultism power does.
And let me make sure I don't spend my whole time talking about Donald Trump, because we're going to come back and talk about him many more times as these go on. I want to go to 2 things. I'll go with you with a double-pronged question, Jim. The run on the Capitol, what's that terminology they use when they overthrew the Capitol, right?
Yeah.
All of us sitting there looking at this on TV, I couldn't believe what I was watching. Okay, I want you to talk about how that plays into people understanding how serious this is right now.
So denying that there was an insurrection.
Okay, the insurrection, that's the word, right?
So denying that, saying that these were just people coming and touring the White House. And even the tour that they've now exonerated, that it wasn't a problem, that they've looked back on, the White House was closed. It was closed for, not White House, the Capitol was closed for COVID. And they weren't doing tours anyway. So why there was anybody even doing a tour? So all of it, but you don't even have to. You could still be blind and listen to what was happening, and you know that this was wrong. And so the fact that there's so many people, millions of people out there, still saying and denying that is so serious on this nation. And it was another indication that there's people that want to take away freedom under what I call the guise of freedom.
Yes.
There's a whole, back to cultism, there's a focus on certain words, freedom, liberty. And the people that are using those words oftentimes are trying to consume and take it away.
Yeah, I want to add to that. You know, I'm going to be involved with a program. I can't really say much about it now, but the author of the book, been talking with him, Ted Johnson, when the stars began to fall. And basically what they've done in this country is say everything that they're doing is for America. But if you think about it, when we think about the independence, we hold these truths, we self-evident, blah, blah, all men are created equal, and women. And then the Constitution, you said it earlier, we the people in order to form a perfect union. So what they've done is use those words, because those people that created those documents were slave owners. They didn't mean those words to fit people like me or for women. But so now the movement has to be, okay, let's use those words. We're going to start a movement that we're going to hold that to reality. But this time we're including women, people of color, to say, yeah, we the people in order to form a more perfect union. And it's so interesting, when Biden got elected, he was playing my cousin's song, We the People. And I thought that was very interesting, because that's exactly what we need to do. Take those documents and make them the reality, that we are all equal and endowed by our Creator with uncertain inalienable rights. And we have to do that. To say that they've taken the American flag and turned it into the Confederate flag.
Now we see this snowball rolling down the hill.
Temptation.
Is there a way to stop it?
You got to, we have to try our best. Otherwise, we will be taken over by a fascist direction, an autocratic direction. Just as the other side, I guess, didn't like the post-George Floyd murder movement that was going on in this country and tried to shut it down, we've got to figure out how to shut down this movement towards an autocratic society.
Voices Southwest Florida Voices for Racial Justice is what?
It is a highly diverse group of individuals trying to learn from each other, to grow from each other, and practice our own voice individually and collectively with no preconceived notion of anything other than becoming a stronger voice.
People want to be a part of it. Is it free? Do you have to have a membership? How do you become a part of it?
Email Voices for Racial actually Voices for RJ at gmail.com. Voices for RJ being racial justice.
Absolutely free?
Yes.
What do you do? Do you meet? How do you meet? You have conferences? You have
Yes. Initially, we did with Zoom meetings. That's typically how we've been meeting. I think Jim alluded to it last week. We had almost 90 people on a Zoom coming together.
From Sarasota
to Naples. It was amazing, and so that's how we meet with Voices. And to segue into that, I offer opportunities for people to come together through my curriculum that I do that works with Voices too.
How do people get more information on you? Get that website.
Okay, the website is raceandethics.com. Raceandethics, ETHICS.com.
Southwest Florida Voices for Racial Justice. It will eventually roll off my lips. I will get comfortable. I'll be doing shows on this as we move forward because we're in some turbulent times.
Yes.
It's at a local level, right?
Yes.
Based on what I'm hearing, if at a micro level is the way things can get done throughout the country, each individual pocket works together to form this wonderful quilt that could be strength.
Yes.
Speak to that.
You've identified that very, very well, because what we're really looking at is networking networks. The more that people understand and appreciate each other locally, the stronger that can be. But to really have a strong voice, it needs to move across the country.
Yes.
It doesn't have any political affiliation. No matter what your political affiliation is, if you have the right intentions for mankind, this is the place you need to be, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you welcome different viewpoints?
Yes, and I especially do that when I teach, and we do the same thing. I'm sure on that call, on that Zoom we had the other night, I was wondering if other people there had contrary viewpoints just to listen, but that's fine too. We have to. Everybody has to be able to hear everybody's voice, even if it's contrary, because I always feel that people can change.
Jim, if I'm not mistaken, you're still an adjunct professor at Florida Gulf Coast University.
Yes, I haven't been removed.
Okay, I'm trying to use the word adjunct. I have no idea what it means, but it sounds good, okay? But my bigger question under that is that at the university level, not that you're speaking for Florida Gulf Coast University and all of that, but at the both of you are educators. At that level, what are we, the young people? What are we, the general consensus about? If you sense any general consensus.
So I teach young people.
Okay. Are they flowing with the current the movement of the governor?
I think they look at my generation and say, where's the beef? Why have you allowed this to happen? I think they are much more comfortable in terms of ethnic diversity, working with each other, collaborating. I never feel it in the classroom, and we've got a very diverse class, and I never feel it in the classroom. I think in many ways they stare at me when I'm talking about things like that. It's like, well, why would you let it be that way? It's all wrong. So that's the positive out of this is that they are the future. And I think that's what causes some fear in people that are in control and power. They don't want that to happen. And you focus on education or stopping education, stopping teaching, stopping learning the truth, and that's what we're doing. We need to avoid that.
Go ahead and add to that final comment.
Well, I agree. Being a college professor myself and having taught for many years, I always saw that the younger generation, they were more receptive. I have 12 grandkids, and oldest granddaughter's about ready to have twins. And when I talk to my grandchildren, they're doing things, and they're put it this way, they're interfaced with so many other different cultures.
Right.
It's almost like, what's wrong with all these older people?
Yes.
My son the same way. Yeah. It's the old people.
What I say is from another song. Tomorrow belongs to the children, but the children belong to us all. And that's what I look at. We have to keep working with the young minds, get their information. Back in the day, and I don't like rap music. I just, because I grew up Motown, everything, and the real music. but one thing that I have noticed that's happened with this hip hop and rap music is if you look at it, everybody can rap and do hip hop, regardless of the color of their skin. They're breaking it down. The music has brought a lot of these young people together on one accord. I can't even tell you any real rap songs except Sugar Hill Gang. but the young people are receptive. We just got to get their voices heard.
All right, we're going to wrap with Lee Pitts Live.
We're going to be coming back.
All right, thank you.
Well, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to have you here. We have a lot more to discuss. Of course, Lee Pitts Live is the epicenter of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think I could probably do whatever I want to do as the host, owner, and executive producer of this TV show. So I don't have a boss who's over me. I can talk about whatever I want to talk about. And we're going to make sure we continue to get the message out and see if we can make this place a more perfect union. How about that?
Amen to that.
Freedom of speech. I hope you can keep it going.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir.
Wouldn't have been here. Lee Pitts Live would not have existed had it not been for my good friend, Jim Nathan, back in the early 90s, recognizing the importance of the television show in his high capacity as a CEO at Lee Health. He embraced the show, and the hospital has been partners of mine ever since. Remember, Miami may have the oranges, but the Southwest Florida Voices for Racial Justice have got the
Juice.
They got the juice. We'll see you.
Lee Pitts Live is a Lee Pitts Enterprise production.
Hello everybody, this is Lee. I'm so glad that you watched that particular show, and if you enjoyed that show, we got other shows like that. Just subscribe to our YouTube channel, watch Lee Pitts Live on demand anytime, and also hit us up on all our social media platforms. Just type in Lee Pitts Live, and there you go.